Welcome to Human at the Helm, the show where we explore what it really takes to navigate marketing in an AI-driven world. I'm your host, Veronica Markol, and every episode I sit down with agency leaders, CMOs, and innovators who are figuring out how to keep humans at the center while embracing the tools of the future. Today, I am so excited to welcome Christine Inge from ThoughtLight LLC, a groundbreaking marketing, training, and development company that was recently approved by Massachusetts as one of the official workforce development training providers, which congratulations, that's fantastic news.
Thank you so much, Veronica.
Christina and her team have been helping companies across state funded training in critical areas like marketing, communications, AI implementation, and leadership development. ThoughtLight is pioneering an innovative approach by making high quality corporate training accessible through state workforce grants, effectively removing cost barriers for Massachusetts companies looking to upskill their teams. Christina, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Veronica. I'm excited to be here at Human at the Helm as well.
Thank you so much. So, Christina, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit more about your career and about ThoughtLight in general?
I got started actually as a writer, a journalist for magazines and a writer in the late 90s. And from there, I transitioned into marketing copywriting, advertising copywriting, back when there was still print, right? And I really am eternally grateful to one of my first editors, in fact, literally my first professional editor, for giving me that opportunity, tapping me for a copywriting opportunity. And that's how I got started in taking on more the communication side rather than the writing, strictly speaking, side. Not going to lie, the first part of what motivated me is that it pays a lot better than being a journalist, but also I started to learn the other aspects of communication. The web was relatively new in those days, so learning web design. And then that led me directly into marketing and digital marketing specifically. So I held a variety of in-house jobs, different organizations, including some startups. My most recent corporate job was well over 11 years ago as the vice president of marketing at a small startup in Boston. That came to an end due to a lack of funding. I pivoted immediately into launching ThoughtLight, which is my agency. I started that in 2014, and we have two main branches. One is we actually still do digital marketing, specifically focused on CRM, customer relationship management systems, content management systems. So getting that AI-driven digital infrastructure up and running and consulting with companies on how to get up off the ground with AI. We're doing a bunch of that right now, and we're available for that. And then we also have a training arm, which is what got approved recently by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as a training grant partner, which means that you can get training up to, I believe, $15,000 worth from us completely for free. You can pick up the phone or email us, call us, bring us in for on-ground training. We will come to you, or you can come to our office, and it's paid for by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We will even fill out the paperwork for people because I believe so much in training the workforce on the digital skills of tomorrow. That's how I was able to make the transition as a Gen Xer from analog to digital, was thanks to workforce training. So we're very, very excited to be bringing that AI and digital training to the companies and the people of Massachusetts now.
That is so impressive. And one of the things that I find fascinating is that a lot of agency leaders that I'm talking to are similarly aged, and it's amazing because we've already had to make so many pivots around shifting from print to digital and social media and now AI. And so it is just amazing to me how facile we've had to remain in order to stay current. And I love that you're doing training. One of the things that I'd really like to hear you talk about, because you have been doing this for a while, is what is the most significant shift you've seen in how clients view the role of agencies? Because you said you have both, you still have the CRM portion of your business. So, how has that really changed for you and client expectations?
I think that clients are getting better at understanding agencies and what they do because people have normalized digital marketing. When I started ThoughtLight 11 years ago, digital marketing was very common, but people still expected different things from it than what it can actually do. For instance, people often thought, well, if we are on social media should be free, and it is free. So people would come to us with budgets that were not realistic and expect all of that to be quickly taken care of. They didn't understand the amount of work that goes into it on both the client and the agency side. So these implementations would be under resourced in terms of time and budget. I think people get it now that digital marketing is just another form of marketing. It is not for free, it's not instantaneous. And so people are better able to come to the agency relationship prepared. They have the time to invest in doing things like social media because they know that, for instance, if you're a small business, the owner's face has to be on your Instagram. You can't just cut us a check and then, never appear on your own Instagram reels. So they have the time, they're invested in it. And that's really interesting for where I think we're going with AI, because for the longest time, we thought social media was the magic bullet. We then realized it's just another wonderful tool in our toolbox. And now I think we're at the same place with AI where we used to be with other things that agencies can bring to the table, which is thinking it's a magic bullet, not understanding how much the human side is part of it, which is, again, where the training piece comes in, because just like anything else, it's a matter of training. But it has evolved. I think it's much more of a partnership, and that benefits both sides.
That's awesome to hear. It's interesting because I've been on both the agency and the client side. I've also found that there's a certain amount of benefit in being able to understand the language from both sides. So, when it comes to training, one of the things I think I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about is y- it seems to me that one of the challenges with AI is it's a great accelerator and it's a great amplifier. But I'm curious, when you're talking about training within an organization, how you help build a team environment working with AI.
And that team environment is so incredibly important. Um, so part of what we do to build that team environment with AI is first and foremost understand what people's skills are. What is their working style? What skills do they bring to the table? And they're going to be different skills than what you see in a marketing team now pre-AI. So for instance, your typical marketing team environment is going to be, there's going to be a graphic designer, there's going to be strategists, there's going to be copywriters. And those roles are still important, but additional roles or additional skill sets are also important. Somebody who's very good at prompt engineering, for instance, is a critical part of every team now. But what are the skills that make someone good at prompting? It's the ability to articulate goals. It's the ability to articulate the brand so that AI, for instance, doesn't give you generic outputs. I'll give you an example from client work. They were really struggling with their SEO. This was a local regional brand here in New England that is creating like organic pet products. They were struggling with their SEO and their social media. And we worked with them to learn about AI. And it all came down to being able to prompt the AI with their right brand voice, with their aesthetics. Because when you don't do that, they ended up with images that were all over the place, the wrong colors for their brand, the wrong tone. It's very uneven depending on who was prompting the AI. Sometimes it was silly, sometimes it was serious and scientific. So they were getting just a hot mess. So the prompting skill is to be able to articulate your brand values, articulate what your brand tone of voice is and your personas, and also the goals for your marketing campaign. Now, right now, that skill set is usually with the VP, director level, or maybe in a small business at the CEO level. Most individual contributors on a marketing team they're a great copywriter, or they're a brilliant designer, or they're great at coding, interactive customer experiences. All of those are skills now that are threatened by AI, especially coding, especially writing, certain kinds of video editing and graphic design. But now everybody has to be good at articulating the brand and how the brand, for instance, manifests within a specific channel or type of content. So the skills are shifting, and maybe there's one person on your team who's really great at articulating the brand, but they might be overlooked because they're the graphic designer. Maybe there's another person on the team who is fantastic, has a sharp eye for art, identifying deviations from the brand that come out of an AI generated output. Those are new skills, and we're going to have to reconfigure our marketing teams to embrace those new skills in addition to the skills that people have. Doesn't mean that we're going to let go of graphic design or copywriting anytime soon, but certainly the amount of person hours required to do those skills is going to change. But we're also going to have to identify skills like articulation of standards, quality control, things that are de-emphasized right now, we're gonna have to get to be super smart about.
So, this is not a question that we talked about before, but
Okay.
one of the things that I find fascinating is, when we went to college, it was pretty easy to identify what you wanted to learn and what you wanted to train for and what you wanted to become. But I think about people going to college now and how do they even decide what do I develop? And I wonder again because you're in training, if you have any advice for people who are just maybe getting started in their marketing career or people who are thinking about going to college to study marketing, like what would you say to them about how to stay relevant without even knowing what 4 years is gonna look like?
We don't know what 4 years is gonna look like, but the younger generation who's in college right now has an advantage that those of us who went to college in the analog or beginning of the digital era did not have, is that they know that they have no idea what's gonna happen 4 years from now. And that can be good because they're not gonna get blindsided, and it allows them to focus on the kinds of skills that are evergreen versus building a skill that's purely tactical and that therefore could be gone in a year or 2 or 5. So an example might be I'm seeing articles in the New York Times, and I'm experiencing this, seeing this with young professionals myself. Learning how to code used to be the guaranteed path to a great job. And those are the jobs that are most threatened right now by AI. And so suddenly humanities graduates are in hot demand. But that doesn't mean, oh, pivot if you love computer science and become a humanities student. What it means is think about the skills that AI cannot replace. I've already talked about a couple of them, like having a sharp eye for brand, but other things include synthesizing processes, understanding organizational goals, and aligning the work that gets done to those organizational goals. On a superficial level, AI can look like it's doing it, but AI cannot fully understand the context in which something is operating or in which something is happening. And so that understanding of context, that kind of long-term strategic thinking is going to be hugely valuable. So focus on those things. The problem right now, if you are coming up as a professional, is that traditionally the kind of training that we get when we're in college, the kind of opportunities that we get when we're in college teach us to be an individual contributor. They don't let us be the boss. And rightfully so, right? If you're new to an industry, you don't understand the long range prospects, you don't have the historical knowledge. So find small ways to become a strategist, to understand context, to understand process and project management. Those are all the solid skills that you need. It doesn't really matter as much what your major is right now, as much as it matters that you can demonstrate to employers that you understand how to manage and understand how a project drives the bottom line or drives results for the business, because that results thinking is not something AI replaces.
It's really interesting when I think about AI and why, in a lot of ways, it almost ensures that humans are safe, is that when it comes to marketing, it's managing relationships.
Yes.
And managing relationships means I can see the smile on your face, or I can see the look of concern, or I can hear the gasp, right? That when I present that out of the box idea that you didn't see coming, that AI can't assess and can't really evaluate. And so it's the things that happen between the spaces, right? Like that's what feels to me like a really important part of the human portion of the human and AI collaboration is the relationship part.
That part is so important, and that is the human AI collaboration. AI can execute very well. AI can sort, filter, organize, generate ideas, serve as a sounding board. It can give you information that it has, which is going to be things like, I'll give you an example. I do a lot of curriculum design as well. So we do corporate training. We also do curriculum design for colleges and universities. One of the things you need to do is articulate learning outcomes. In other words, measurable performances of tasks and abilities that students will have to demonstrate at the end of a course. AI is really great at taking the big picture of your course of what do people need to be able to learn at the end and breaking it down into 5 or 6 learning outcomes per week and atomizing that information. It's fantastic at that. What it cannot do, and where the human comes in, is understand what it means to be a proficient professional in a particular space. It doesn't understand that. It can look at a list of tasks, but it can't look at cross-disciplinary skill sets that are needed. So for instance, for Northeastern University, I developed and teach 2 courses, a 2-semester sequence on project management for communications professionals. So how to lead communications functions in an agency or on the corporate level. It can understand what it means to execute on a marketing campaign. What it can't understand is how to lead within an agency as, say, a creative director where the burnout rate is high by protecting your staff's energy because it's a robot. It has infinite energy. It doesn't understand the vibe of being a creative director and what it means to be the kind of leader who can drive to tight deadlines, but not burn your staff out. That's something that you need agency experience to be able to teach that to the next generation of professionals. It's not going to understand that. And it's also not going to be understand that that's not a marketing or communication skill set. That's a leadership skill set and that you're going to have to pull in resources from the literature on leadership development and teaching leadership to be able to create an effective class. It has no idea. I'll give you an example. I love early 20th century music. I was working in Claude just yesterday and I mentioned something how before my class I'm listening to the Three Penny Opera from Kurt Weill, if you're going to pronounce it fussy. And it said that is a song. Those are songs with very violent lyrics. It may make you appear aggressive to have listened to that music because it can understand the words and the lyrics, but it doesn't understand that Weimar Republic vibe. It doesn't understand Bobby Darin, right? It doesn't understand the Rat Pack. It doesn't understand. I'm like, no, I just listen to this music for the swagger. And it's like, yeah, but can't you listen to gentler music for the swagger? Because you're aggressive in the classroom. And I'm like, first of all, Claude, you're disappointing me. That sounds very gendered. Would you tell a male professor not to sound aggressive? And I'm like, what about people who listen to gangster rap to get their energy level up? I'm teaching a night class late in the day. I'm going to blast something that's peppy, but it's not trained on gangster rap lyrics because those are copyright protected. It doesn't have that context. It doesn't understand the history of sexism in the ad agency world and what telling a woman to be less aggressive by not listening to, for crying out loud, show tunes sounds like, because it's lacking that context. So imagine if somebody doesn't bring the human element into a partnership with AI, and let's say you decide, I'm going to be all creative and I'm going to come up with a playlist of songs for agency creative directors. And it's going to say, oh, no, 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 you tisk tisk, you can't listen to that song. It's going to make you sound aggressive, Miss Creative Director. And imagine if that gets released. What kind of blowback would you get? You would get women being like, I got scolded for listening to show tunes because and it's just, it's going to be tone deaf, right? It's going to not understand the context. It's not going to understand the lived experience. It's not going to understand the history of people in the creative industry, in the ad agency industry. And so it's useless for disciplines where context, relationships, personal development, leadership development, human development are important. So it's going to look like magic if you're teaching, for instance, risk matrices to people getting their PMP. because that's something that doesn't require anything that an AI hasn't been trained on, right? Someone at one point uploaded the PMP handbook, I'm sure, or some derivative of it to ChatGPT and Claude. So it's going to spit out really accurate factual information. You're going to start to trust it. And then you're going to go into those disciplines where you're doing workforce development where the AI cannot go. And it's going to create things that could be offensive, that are going to be biased, that are going to sound weird because it just doesn't have the data. AI is a data driven tool. It's been trained on a bunch of words. It understands bunches of words. That's why it sometimes sounds so credible, but it's not able to create useful and frankly healthy, important information for people who are learning to be leaders or who are learning, frankly, to do anything that requires human interface beyond the just factual. And I know AI is growing by leaps and bounds. And every time someone like me goes on a podcast and says, oh, this is a thing AI can't do, 6 months later, AI is able to do it. Remember when we thought that AI would forever be putting extra fingers on hands?
God, I do, because I built a
Yes.
web using only AI generated images, and it was scary at first, and now it's amazing.
Yes. So I'm very reluctant to say, oh, yeah, AI is always going to make stupid suggestions related to, I don't know, show tunes or whatever. But I do want to say that that's where the AI human partnership, I think, is going to continue to be healthy, is looking at the big picture, looking across disciplines, bringing in that nuanced lived experience or understanding of how the world works. And frankly, I think that's where our generation, because we have longer lived experience, are going to be very valuable workers because we can bring tons of context, and context is where AI is never going to be, or okay, probably watch me be wrong here, where it is not currently as strong as a human being. So that's where that partnership really, I think, flourishes.
So it's not obvious that you're passionate about this.
Oh, clearly, no, I'm practically bouncing out of my chair here, but no, 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 I just have no feelings about AI whatsoever.
And it is exciting to me to hear you talk about leadership. I have horses, and when I owned my agency, I was dealing with a really difficult horse, and I realized that there are core themes between horsemanship and leadership because it is about developing trust.
Hmm.
And what's nice is that horses give you immediate feedback and they don't carry a lot of baggage. So if you change your behavior, you can see them change their behavior. And it's a great experience for people in leadership to be able to experience that and actually get that firsthand. When you talk about managing teams and especially like understanding how to get the best out of people without driving them so hard you burn them out. Like that it's really is my next question, how to help people do their best work without burning them out. And I'm really curious, what are the patterns that you're seeing in terms of team stress around AI adoption, especially because you're doing the training, right? And getting people to adopt things is really the biggest barrier, I think, in technology is adoption.
It very much is. And first, I want to preface this by saying that, there's that notorious MIT report that 95% of AI implementations fail. But if you dig into that report, what it's really saying is that 95% of AI pilots that come top down on the corporate level end up just staying at the pilot and not moving forward into production. But in that same study, 90% of employees are using AI on their own when in their work. So the reality is that employees are using AI, the adoption is there. I think for the training component though is training is official. And what right now employees are afraid of is that if their employer starts to mandate AI, officially AI becomes part of the company culture, workflows, tech stack, what have you, their jobs are on the line. They're going to get replaced by AI. And the reality is certain roles and certain functions are going to get replaced or displaced or disrupted by AI. Their fear is not unfounded. Let's not gaslight people into saying AI is no threat to jobs. It is. It is a threat. I was recently quoted in some articles in CIO magazine and Computer Week about these and Diginomica about this displacement, and MSNBC. Oh no, CNBC. I recently spoke to them about this same issue. It's real. So the consumer fear, the employee fear is real. So they're adopting it, but they don't want to be seen to be adopting it in a way that's going to threaten their jobs. So that's the number one stressor for people right now is, are they training me to use AI, but then ultimately will I lose my job to AI? And people are smart. They know that AI learns from what humans do. So they're almost like, am I being trained on AI, or am I training the AI by interacting with it to do my job? Some people do worry about that. And then the flip side of the worry is just what we always see with any kind of new technology or method is, will I be able to learn this? Why do I have to learn this? What if I'm no good at this? So that's just the usual fear, but there's a new fear, which is by using AI, I'm actually making it more likely that I will be replaced by the AI because I'm prompting it, giving it feedback. It's now learning how to do my job better. And that is a valid fear, and it's a real fear. It's not something we can solve technologically. The AI is going to get better at your job the more you use it to do your job. It has to come from the companies themselves to be committed to their workers, to retraining people, training them to work with AI, carving out the part of the work process that is human driven, or else we'll all get replaced by robots.
But there's a lot that you've brought up that I would really like to probe, but one of them is this. You talked about kind of what are the ethics, right? Like, what do you see as a way to ethically innovate with AI in the agency experience, right? Like, how do you, as an agency owner, work with your team to bring them AI in a way that helps them feel supported and not threatened?
A good part of this is listening to your employees, right? If 90% of them are already using AI, they know how it impacts their work. They know what it makes easier, what it can't do. Of course, there's probably lots of people out there using AI ineffectually and just learning as they go. But there is a lot. The primary knowledge of how to use AI is with the people currently using AI. So you want to be fully transparent, and you want it to be led with a lot of employee input of where, for instance, are people overwhelmed by their jobs. For instance, CRM, which is where ThoughtLight comes in and where we do a lot of work. People are not worried AI is going to take their job as CRM administrators because the biggest problem is lack of headcount, lack of anybody who even understands how to run the CRM, let alone how to get the most out of it and make sure your data's clean and yada, yada, yada. So where do you completely lack headcount? Where would AI actually solve problems for people? So listen to your employees. That's the first step with doing it ethically. And then the bigger issue around it are just the ethics of AI in general. Are you using a model that has been trained to be less biased? I mean, like I said, even Anthropic's Claude, which is supposedly the more ethical AI, chastised me just the other day to not sound too aggressive in class, which was, again, pretty gendered bias. There's been a study that I read in Psychology Today that if someone goes to an AI chatbot for recommendations on work-life balance, it gives men and women different recommendations. It gives people of different socioeconomic status different recommendations. Depending on how educated, quote unquote, your vocabulary is, an AI is going to give you different job recommendations, even with the same resume. So the bias is really there. And so the ethics of working with AI means being mindful of the bias. Don't put your head in the sand that it's not there, and have a plan to detect and mitigate that rather than just letting even an AI that's marketed as ethical just do its own thing without any kind of human safeguards. And then there's the environmental impact. I would say, for instance, purchasing carbon offsets, having people stop and think twice, just the way we've learned with recycling in the office and turning off lights. Do I really need to do this with AI? Do I need to generate an image, or can I repurpose an image? Because that's going to use more electricity if I generate a fresh image versus taking one I've already generated and maybe editing it in Canva or something. So having people start to think just as they do about turning off a light bulb of, do I really need to generate this? Can I use a lighter model? that uses less electricity. If I'm just coming up with a to-do list for an intern, do I really need to use an agentic tool for that? No. It's going to use way too much electricity when I can use the lightest model, like say Claude's Haiku, and generate a perfectly good to-do list with a lot less energy usage. So that kind of knowledge that there's actually different ways of using AI that use less energy, same as anything else that uses energy, that is another area of ethics that I'm excited about, and I don't think too many of us are talking about right now.
don't think anywhere near enough of us are talking about it. I love the idea of offsetting it with purchasing carbon neutral alternatives. I mean, that's a brilliant idea. So now my last question has evolved as we've been talking because, I'm a firm believer that the opposite of fear is knowledge, right? I mean, in horse training, right, like getting to a place of security and my ability to do anything with them has come from learning what you need to do in order to be able to do that.
Mhm.
So here's my question for you, and this is going to be the hardest question you've answered today. When you think about everything you know about AI, right? And you're training people, I mean, you must have a good idea of what to say yes to and what to say no to. What is
Mhm.
it about AI that keeps you up at night?
Honestly, the job loss. I think that's what keeps me up at night, number one. So it's two things really. It's what are we going to do? We are going to be losing jobs to AI, and how are we going to deal with that as a society? I don't think individual employers are going to be able to address that. I know I haven't been able to address that. So how are we going to do that? And then the other thing is the mistakes that AI makes. Yes, humans make mistakes. AI also but mistakes. We have hundreds of years of knowledge on how to prevent human error, and it still happens in every industry. But, in every industry from surgery to air traffic control to marketing, we've got safeguards against those errors. We have only begun to start using AI for the past couple of years, and we've only recently gone from total skepticism thinking, oh, AI makes tons of mistakes. It's, got the 12-fingered hands, to now it on the surface looks so good and so plausible that we're starting to get sanguine about that. We're starting to kind of let down our guard about AI mistakes. And I think we are on the cusp of there's going to be an incident. There's going to be something where AI is going to make a catastrophic mistake because it now doesn't look as rough as it used to. It looks safer to use. And we're going to have to then start thinking about what are the safeguards we're going to put into place then, and I really hope it isn't that catastrophic a mistake. So that keeps me up at night. What is going to happen? And of course, you hear all these sensationalist news articles about AI psychosis and people going crazy because the AI told them to do something. And then you read the article and you realize it was someone who didn't fact check an AI output, right? If you don't fact check, that's not necessarily being crazy. That's just not knowing how to fact check. So I think we're worrying about the wrong things with AI. I think we're worried about individuals suffering some kind of mental health crisis because of AI, which I don't think is this giant society-wide problem. I think it's a moral panic overall. I mean, my heart goes out to the people who have struggled with mental health in ways that may be intersected with AI. But I think our biggest problem is we're turning over entire systems in a couple of years to AI, and the AI is going to make some terrible mistakes.
What it reminds me of when you talk about that is when when blogs first started happening and how that really changed how people consumed what they were reading as news.
Yes.
And I remember there was some crazy statistic, like there was a new blog published every second. And
Mhm.
actually having the critical thinking skill to be able to evaluate what is it that I want to believe? What are the things that I need to question? And that's still, right? Like it's still very relevant. Critical thinking skills, I hate to say it, but it sounds like still a liberal arts education is going to be really valuable because it is one of the places where you can learn critical thinking skills.
Exactly. I mean, it's like AI is not what is causing the critical thinking crisis in our society.
No, it's not.
No, no. I don't think critical thinking is collapsing in our society because of critical thinking skills. Because of AI. I think we lack thinking skills all the time. And we are now just experiencing what happens with that. And it is, again, nothing at all to do with AI. I think we're just getting dumb. Here's a hopeful thing, and I actually told my Harvard class this. So another thing that I do is I came up with and built and run Harvard's AI marketing certificate,
Wow.
which is very exciting, a huge honor. I'm incredibly lucky to be able to do that. And somebody in the class yesterday shared a study that came out of MIT that people's cognitive abilities decline thanks to AI usage. And I pointed out a good thing. Every technology humans have ever invented that saves brain effort has destroyed our cognitive abilities. If you go and talk to somebody who is, for instance, a marketplace seller in a society where they don't have literacy, where they have to keep their accounts in their heads because they can't read and write, and you scan those people's brains, and there have been studies, they are smarter than us. People who cannot read and write, who grow up in societies where reading and writing are not common, are smarter than people who can read and write. So, the first technology that made us stupid was the pen, the abacus.
Wow.
There's everything that keeps you from having to keep stuff in your head, takes away cognitive ability. Does that mean that we're all stupid? No, it means that certain cognitive abilities since time immemorial, humans have outsourced. If you can write down how much money you made yesterday, that means you don't have to keep it in your head. That ability then to memorize a lot of information is not a muscle you're exercising anymore. So the pen makes you dumber. AI is just one of many technologies that takes away our ability to do certain tasks. But I think we need to just redefine the cognitive tasks that are important, because what else does being able to read and write give us? It gives us the ability to create poems, to make films, to write novels, to read novels, to talk about them in our book group. So we've developed new cognitive abilities. And going back to that generational difference, you and I grew up when being able to do math without a calculator was a vital life skill, and being able to read a map. Nobody needs to do any of those things. But does that mean that we're necessarily smarter than someone who grew up after reading paper maps stopped being a skill? No, because they have different skills that we don't grow up with.
Yeah.
I
All right.
know young people who can make a video that is so professional and polished that I can't do any better as a media professional. So I think we need to redefine what cognitive skills matter, that we're not actually getting dumber, but I joke we're getting dumber, but I think we're just changing the cognitive skills that we're good at. That's all.
And it's also a huge relief because really what you're saying is it's a muscle and we all have the ability to condition that muscle. So I think
Exactly.
again, critical thinking skills still are one of my favorite things to encourage people to really focus on and to think slow, to go back to thinking slow. So this has been a great conversation. Honestly, we could talk all day about this. I love the combination of AI and leadership and really understanding where humans are so important in this relationship at this point in time. And I also really appreciate that you qualified how quickly this is changing, how this tomorrow, who knows, right? Who knows what it'll be tomorrow because it just changes so fast. But before we wrap up, I did want to make sure that you had the opportunity to let people know how they could reach out to you and if they wanted to learn more about ThoughtLight or if they wanted to learn more about the workforce training, how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. They can find us at ThoughtLight, ThoughtLight.net, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Christina Inge EdD. Send me a LinkedIn invite. Those are going to be the two fastest ways to reach out to us. We are booking trainings for the fall. So if you want free training and you're in Massachusetts, reach out to us. If you want training outside of Massachusetts, first of all, I do travel, and then also we can do remote trainings. Those are not free, but we are also booking those as well. So thoughtlight.net is how the best and fastest way to reach me, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Christina, thank you so much. And I will make sure to drop those URLs in the notes. So if people are watching Human at the Helm podcast, they'll be able to find that information there. Again, Christina, a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Veronica. It's been a pleasure. And thanks everybody for listening.